Little group, Jeff here. So I'm going to try to show today some of my new solar workflow from start to finish, I hope. So this part of the video is going to be about the start, which is acquiring the data, and then I'll show you my new tool that Rusty suggested, which is the cereal box plastic flats. And I bought a hoop, an embroidery hoop. Let's see if I can get in close enough so you can see that. At what's the name? Hobby Lobby. And it only cost a few bucks, $3, maybe 3.5 with tax. And then this is doubled up. So if you can see here, I actually have 2 layers. It's 2 layers thick. And I find that this is actually working out nicely for what I'm doing. So as you can see on the screen here, I have everything running, and I am connected to a switch right here. This goes down to my router in the basement, which is connected to the internet, and this cable is connected to another switch right here, this one. And then these 2 computers are also connected into the switch, and then this line runs out to the scope. So I have another switch which is out here, right here. And the reason why I have a switch at the computer on this mount is when I run my C14, that's the marks over there for it, I'll run a cable from that computer into this network switch. And then I just remote desktop into everything, and I'm in good shape. So this computer is running. I'm on the sun. I have an Explore Scientific AR102. I'm using the diagonal because I don't have all my parts in to go straight through, which would help with my Newton rings. And so I'm using a 2-inch diagonal with a cork, and this is the Melicam 2.3. Now this isn't the best camera for solar, but it's working out pretty good. And then this little device right here, I don't know if you can see it, but I 3D printed this, and it's a sun finder for me, and that helps out a lot. If because I can't align the scope, I'm on my marks, so I'm going to be very, very close, but not perfect. So what we'll do now is I'll fire up the computer, and I'll see you in a little bit. Okay, I'm now at my workstation here that is the computer that you saw in the first part of the video. And I'm using the Windows Store version of Remote Desktop because this seems to work a little better with the Remote Desktop and OBS. So what you will see here is I have the DS 2.3 Plus running. It's in 12-bit mode. It's in grayscale, and it's digital binning 1. So because I want the highest bit rate or bit depth I can get, I'm only getting about 25 frames per second. So what we want to see in the image is I've got some boogers here and here, and you can see the Newton rings. So how are we going to get rid of those? What I will use is my Rice Krispies plastic that's in the embroidery hoop, and I'm going to go out to the mount and just set this on top of the scope and hope it doesn't blow away because it is a little windy here today. And what you should see on screen is that uh, it went black, and now all I need to do is just up all I need to do is up the exposure to get my histogram hump to around 100. And you can now see all of my boogers, the Newton rings, and if I make flats, oh, you also want to be on the center of the sun when you do this because that's the most even light for the sun. And I'm not sure I'm on the center of the sun, but this is just to show you. So now I'm going to capture 10 fields and enable them, and you can see that, boom, all of my stuff went away. Now, if you're going to make animations, what you have to do, I will turn this off. You go into options, preferences, and I'm going to make sure that I'm on the center of the sun. So instead of 500 frames, I only want 20 frames. And then I'm going to remove this so that I can make sure I'm on the center of the sun. And I don't want any of the activity on the sun to affect the flat. So I will lower the exposure to 5 and whoa, I must be on high speed here. Let's slow this right down. Okay, I'm going to say right there is where we want to be. So I'm going to go put the flat thingy on the scope. I'm going to raise the histogram, and I like about 100 here. It's about a third. That's good. And now I'm going to go, because I have created a target named Sunflats, and I'm just going to record them. And it's already done. I'm going to remake my flats, and I'm going to enable them, and now I'm done. Now these flats are going to be good for about a half an hour to 45 minutes. And because the sun is moving through our atmosphere, it affects your flats. So what you'll find is that if you keep using the same flats, and I'll show you this in the post-processing part of the video, how you can affect that if your flats, you were using the same flat too long, and how you can fix that. So let's go to 5. We'll go to see if we can find. Now, what you will see is that on the histogram, we have 2 humps. And what this is, let me just go up. Oops, wrong way, Jeff. I want to do a quickie white balance. And now I want to go down. And you'll see that right now there's only 1 hump, but as I go lower, another hump starts to appear. And what that is the very thin edge of the sun's surface has, it's almost like an atmosphere separate from the face of the sun. And that's what we're seeing. And sometimes there are proms embedded in this. And how we can see that without moving the exposure is to go to color adjust, and then we'll just tweak, and you can see there's a prom right there. And I'm still seeing the surface. Now the surface is getting washed out because I haven't really done anything to the image yet. So let's see if we can help this out a little bit. There we go. So you can see that right there is a very thin line. And some of that is my focus is a little off. I don't have a motor focus, so I have to walk out to the scope all the time. And this is good enough focus for me. The prom looks good. And we're seeing some surface detail. So just by moving the gamma would be mids in Photoshop world. And I have asked Rock if he would put a mids slider. So we have black point, white point, and if we had a mids slider, we don't necessarily need to grab it because the gamma moves the mids. And what we can't tell right now is as you're moving the mids, you could either go past the black point or you could go past the white point, that's not good. And Rock has said that he's going to look into seeing if he can get that done for us. I think that it won't help so much with deep sky as it will help with solar. And now that he has some new solar cams that are using Mellencamp Sky, I think it would behoove him to add this feature to the Mellencamp Sky software. So now if we just zoom in a little bit, you can see that the surface here has got little spikes. And that's not an error. That's actually, I forget what they call them. They might be called little spikes for all I know. But that is the surface of the sun at the limb. Has a lot of activity, and when we post-process this, we can really bring that out, which I will show at a later date. So we'll just go around. We've got prompts here. We're still seeing, geez, Jeff, go the right way. And you can see that now that the flats are enabled, there's a nice prom there. All kinds of prominences. There's something going on there. So we have a lot of nice detail here in this image. And I think what happens is a lot of people go past to get that. And what you're losing is if you're looking for prompts, you don't want to go past this because you're going to lose that section of the atmosphere right here. And you will also be able to still see the surface of the sun as well as any prominences that are on the sun, like that guy. So we can bring that out by adding a little more gamma. And then it's not so much the look that you're seeing here as it is the look that you're going to see in post-processing. So when you make your animation, I use Sear, SER animations over AVI animations. And then that has pluses and minuses, but I feel that the results are much better if you use a Sear animation over an AVI animation. And when you set up your histogram, you don't want to clip any of this data because that you don't get back. Once you clip that data is gone. So what I would do is then go into options because I've already made my flats, and I would up this to say 500, apply, and we have solar sun. We'll add one that says sun face proms. Say OK, apply, say OK. And I'll bring this back to 1. Then I'll adjust my histogram accordingly. And kind of like that. And then all I do is hit record. And you can see down here we've got 200 frames, 300 frames, and 500 frames. So I'll usually make 2 of this because this camera is so slow. I'll usually take 2 500 frame animations. And then out of that, I'll combine them in PIP to pick out the best. Say 500, and then I'll take that new animation into Auto Stacker, and let's go up here. We'll get a couple of different. Somewhere there's a spot. There's a spot. We'll fix this. Okay, so that looks pretty good. I've got this whole area. And look at that. So now I'm going to change my target name to sun and take a couple of these. And you can see how even the sun is looking except for right here. And there's something going on here. But I do have a spot that is brighter here than the rest of this image, which is okay because I want to show you how you can fix that. And it's not that difficult, but it is something that you have to do in a program like Photoshop that has layers. You don't need to use Photoshop, but as long as you can build up layers, and then you would add a gradient, and then change that. You would add a layer gradient, and then change this the type to soft light, and then you can change the strength of that to clear out the gradients. Okay, we'll take one more of these. But solar is much, much more, I would call solar much more of a normal post-processing workflow once you get into Photoshop. There isn't a lot you can do after you've processed the image in IMPPG. It's all just simple stuff in Photoshop, so it's not rocket science. Okay, so we've created a couple of images here, or a couple of different locations of the sun. And this data will be used in the IMPPG workflow, and then from from AutoStacker, we need to take like the best 10%, but you need to look at what the data is telling you, and then you determine how much of that data you want to keep. And then once you get your single frame from the stack, then you go into IMPPG and process. If you have proms, you process specifically for the proms, or you process for the surface like we're showing here. Now, once you get out of IMPPG, then you would go into your image processing software. I use Photoshop, and you would take, I use, my first run in Photoshop is to use Camera Raw to clean up some issues that IMPPG will make, and then maybe a high pass filter to sharpen things up a little bit. And then after that, I would see how it looks. If it looks good, then I would add color and save it off and send it to you guys. So the next portion, or the next time you see me, I'll be sitting in the house at the workstation, the graphics workstation, and we'll go on to the next step. Alrighty, so now I'm at this computer workstation that I do all my graphical endeavors at, and I'll provide a list of the software in alphabetical order. This is not the order that they get used. I'll also provide links in the description below the video here. And the first one's AutoStacker, IMPPG, Photoshop, and Sear Player. And what we will do is lose the face and start the program, because this is going to be long, maybe. So what I want to do is open up Sear Player, because if you remember back to when we made the flats, I made two versions of the flats. One as a Sear animation of 20 frames, and then another where I just grabbed 10 fields and enabled the flat so that we could see it in real time. So I will load up the flats that we want to use. And you can see that the flat has the rings. It's got my boogers on the optics. Now that the, now that the video is over, I can clean those off. I wanted to add some boogers so that you could see that it will get removed. And what makes Sear Player so unique is it not only will play the animation, but it will allow you to save off frames. And we need to save off the frames because I'm going to use Photoshop to make the stack. So I only want 10 of the 20. So I'll start at 5. and go to 14 to give me 10 frames selected. Then I'm going to next, say next. And in that same folder, I'm going to call these Sun Flats 110. And we want to save them as TIFF files. And you'll see it's saving off the 10 frames. It's done. If I open up a file explorer and go into the folder, you will see that the 10 flats are there. So now what I want to do is I want to select the first one, and I want to open with Photoshop. And we're going to use Photoshop to stack. So this is for you, Simon. So now that this first image is open, what we want to do is bring that file explorer to the forefront, and we want to select the other 9 and just drag and drop them on top of the image that's open. And you just want to keep hitting enter until it loads all 9. Now we have all 9 loaded. And what I want to do is I want to select them all and make a smart object. So now all those 10 files are in this one smart object. So now I want to go to layer type, smart objects, stack mode. And you will see that every available stacking mode is available to us in Photoshop to stack these 10 frames. So I'm going to use a median stack, if that's the correct word. And you'll see that it's changed the icon here to tell you that it's done the 10. Now we need to flatten it. And we can save this as a master flat that we can use in Auto Stacker. So I'm just going to call this dash master. So we can close Photoshop, and you can see there's my master file. So now I'm going to open up Auto Stacker. I'm going to load the first file that we made, which I believe was the prom. Let me go back. What's that date say? Yeah, I changed the. And I think that's the better of the two. So I'm just going to move this out of the way, and you can see that my Newton rings, my boogers are in the image. And to take care of that, I'm going to load that master flat right here. Oh, I don't want this one. I want this one. And that's gotten rid of all my gradients from the rings and my boogers. So now I'll replace the stabilization anchor and analyze. Now my settings, I haven't changed anything. It's basically stock settings. So I'm going to analyze this. And if I remember correctly, the data for this was kind of iffy. And the reason for that is I'm using the 2.3 plus, and that only has at 12-bit, the best I can do is 25 frames a second, which for solar work is not ideal. But it gets the job done. Now you can see that the majority of my data is below 50%. So what I'm going to do, just for the heck of it, is open up the other one and see if that data is any better. Now I don't need to I don't need to load a master flat because it's remembered the flat that was, oops, sorry. It's remembered the flat that was already there. So I'm going to analyze this to see if the data is a little bit better. This is why I take two series with this camera, because sometimes in that 500 frames I'll have better seeing. I could also take those two 500 frame animations and run them through pip, and then take the best 500 of those and then run it through AutoStacker. But this is, yes, this data is much better. So what we will do is take 20% of this, which is what you're seeing right here. So I could do 20, 40, 60, 100 if I wanted to, or I could pick a number and we'll make folders for each. Now, because I have prominences, which we will see as I blow this up, you can see a prom there, there's a little one there. I am going to, and for this size image, I'm going to take 48 with a minimum brightness of 10 and just hit that. Then I'm going to up the brightness, and then I'm going to manually place some points to cover the prom. I'll bring back down the brightness. Now that doesn't affect the brightness at all. And then I'm going to hit stack. And it should go through this pretty quick. It's only stacking 20% of the 500. Alrighty, so now it's saving. And what we can do is now, depending on your system resources, you may want to close this, but I'm going to leave it open. And then open IMPG, IMPPG, and load that image that we just stacked. And you can see for 2022, I've mostly done sun. I haven't been able to get out. Okay, this is the new one. There's the image. And what you want to do is click on this so you see the whole image. Then we want to select the whole image. And then generally in IMPPG, the defaults are pretty close. But I will show you what they do. I also like to up this to about 56. And we will turn on prevent ringing. And now I'm going to open up the tone curve. And as I open the tone curve, or I start working on the tone curve, you can see there's a little hump right here. That is, that's two things. That could be two things, or both things. And one of them, oops, get over there. Come on. That could be this prom and then this edge. And this edge right here is basically another layer of atmosphere that can only be seen from the limb. And that has an area that if we zoom into, you can see that it's kind of got what looks like little spikies on it. I don't know if that's the correct terminology for the sun, but that's what I'm calling it. And that is good data. That's not bad data. It's just my focus was a little off and it's not very crisp, but it's good enough for this presentation. Now, uh, when you're showing the face, the limb, proms, and space, I find that you want to kind of use a negative view versus a positive view. So a positive view would be this, where you're bringing out the surface detail, but you're losing the prom a little bit. Let me just grab another point here. Yeah, I don't like that, so let's get rid of this. So this is one way to do it. I don't like this way as much as the negative view. And to do that, what you want to do uh, is bring out, although that doesn't look too bad there. So we'll save. And you can see that this prom or filament is actually starts on the surface and goes out past the limb, which is kind of cool. So this is your standard aggressive S curve. And to be able to see all the detail on the surface, you really want to get aggressive with your S curve. But to do that, you wind up going past where the filament is. So if you start backing off on the filament, or to see the filament, then you're almost better off going negative. And to do that, you do this. Let me just reset it so that this will help you out. So I bring this one up, make a point here, bring this down, make another point to cover the filament. And now what I want to do is find a spot where I have a black background. Something like that. And now I can start working on the surface. Like so. And I think this looks better because you can see more of the filament. Doing it this way, and the spikies start coming out in that area. So this would be a negative view with surface detail. And this is my personal preference for anything that's got the limit showing. So we'll save this. Or I'm sorry, what we'll do is now we'll start tweaking. So I'm going to exaggerate some of these settings so that you can see what they do. And that's too far, so we'll back off. We'll go to 2. That's still too far. And if you zoom in, you can see it's still got that moire pattern. So then we'll do 1.5. That I like. I think the sigma, we'll bump that up to 3. And you can see right in here, it's kind of giving it a funky pattern. So I'll back off to 1.2 and then up this to, say, 2. Maybe go to 1.4. So all in all, that isn't looking too bad. 1.3. Still a little noisy, but that's okay. We can clean some of that up in you can see how that really sharpened up these little spiky areas. So let's do 2.4. Okay, I like that. Maybe let's see what that does, if that gets a little too noisy. Yeah, I think it did. We'll go back to 1.3 and we'll leave the amount at 2. And I'll save this image. We'll call this stacked or IMPPG'd. PPG'd. And now what I want to do is go and open up the surface feature, which I believe was this one. And I'm just moving the anchor point for the stabilization. Excuse me. Allergies are bad. We've had so much rain, and then after it rains, it's 90 degrees plus. Fun, wow. So this data looks pretty good, so I think I might use this. And we will keep, let's do 25%. And again, I'm going to, because of the image size, I'm going to use the same 48. I don't have any proms to worry about, so I'm just going to hit place grid. It's done that. And then we're going to stack. And again, for all of the melon cameras out there, all these files, all these data files were made from within Mellencamp Sky. And I showed you how I set my Mellencamp Sky up to do that. It's very easy. So we're almost done with the stacking. Now it's doing the analyzing, the recombination, and the saving. So that's done. We can close this to free up some space. Go to IMPPG, and we will open up our image. And because I've used this already, it's picked up my settings, and we just want to use that because they might be good for this, and I kind of think they are. And what you can do, or not do, but what you can see is there's a filament here. There's a huge filament here that kind of wraps along and then goes back down into the surface here and then pops back out here, and it's going off this way. This thing was huge. I couldn't get it all in one frame and get these spots. And you can also see that right now it's set up for a negative because that's the way I had it set up again. So what we can do is just reset the histogram or the tone curve, and then I can start making my new S curve. Go something like that if I want to. Now, what you will notice is that the flat that I made the flat that I made was not the best. You can see that we're lighter down here, darker up here. Let's see if we can help that out. That's a little better. Do something like that. Now, I don't want to mess with the deconvolution because I'm liking the deconvolution. Again, you could change your settings off so that you can see what I like to do is go big on these and then start backing off and just remember what the defaults were. So it's 1.3, 1.3, and 1. And always make sure that you have prevent ringing on. And I like to do 100 or 56 iterations. You can do 50, anywhere between 50 and 70. Anything above that or below that, you have undesirable effects. So I'm good with this image. We'll save it off. And we'll call this IMPG'd. IMPPG'd. We can close this. I will open up Photoshop. We'll do the one we just did. And I'll just open up. You see my names are getting a bit long. So the first thing I want to do is crop out my stacking artifacts. And you do that in Photoshop with the crop tool. Hit enter. More cropped. Got one bad corner, but good enough for this video. Now we can see that we're a little lighter in this corner than we are for the rest of the image. So uh, what we can do is add a layer and then use a gradient, the gradient tool. And you want to have it as a black and white gradient. And because it's kind of lighter to darker, we want our gradient tool to go off this way. And you can see that that's going to look good. So I'm going to do a soft light, and then using the fill level, I can back off on this until it's much closer, which that's not too bad. We'll do 48. And that's how you can fix some light to dark gradients in Photoshop on your solar images. Because if you can't get exactly on the center of the sun when you make your flats will be uneven. And because there's so much activity on the sun, you don't want any of that in your flat. So sometimes it can be hard to make flats for the sun, but the flats that you do make will work, as you're noticing here. So now what I want to do is I want to make this a smart object and go into my camera raw tool. And I like to add a little more contrast. Now you'll see that this is processing the non-gradiated image, which is what we want. I'm going to add a little texture. I'm going to add a little clarity. And I'm going to do just a tiny bit of dehaze, maybe an 8. That's looking good. And then normally I don't use the sharpening tools in Photoshop, but for this I think I might, just to see what happens. So we'll do 32 and then some noise reduction will bring back, the sharpening will help bring back what happens when you use the noise reduction. So this is looking good. There's some really cool looking, there's like baby filaments happening here. Some really cool stuff. And we'll say okay. And you see that because the top layer is turned on, I might have a little too much, so oops. Do 32. That's better. And all that's left to do now is to colorize the image. So we want to convert it to an RGB. We don't want to merge. We don't want to rasterize. I want to go to adjustment layers, and I want to pick a tone curve, and I will grab the red. Something like that, maybe. That's a little too aggressive. Grab some blue. Something like that, maybe. And then we'll go to the green channel. The green channel will usually help you with getting some of the green back in. Make a little less, and then we can actually use the full RGB channel to maybe darken it up a little bit. Like so. All right, so that's how I process my surface detail. If you really wanted the filament to pop, then what you can do is flatten the image and then invert it. And you can see all these little things down in here. Some really cool stuff happening here. Same here. And then this filament is kind of going up, 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 and then back down into the sun, and then it pops back out here. And it was so big I couldn't get it in and get the sunspots in the same shot. Just cool stuff. Cool stuff. And then I would send you guys this image. So I will not save this. And now we want to open up the limb image. And we can do the same thing. I need to do a crop first. Bring this one up. Like so. And I would go into camera. We'll make it a smart object. Where are you? We'll do a camera and basically do the same thing where some beautiful, beautiful activity right there on the surface of the limb. And when I was using the Lunt last year, I was having a hard time because I didn't know there was actually a surface. There was another surface. So it's kind of looking at, if we were in space, we would be looking at the thin blue line of our atmosphere. This is the same thing. And that these little spiky things are all a part of that. It's just so cool. Doesn't take much to impress me. So we'll do the same thing. This will help get rid of the noise induced from the deconvolution. We'll do a basic contrast upgrade. I might go a little more here just to see what it does. Yeah, I can live with this. Then we'll do some texture. I don't want to go too much. We'll do 16. Clarity. 24. We'll stay there. Little dehaze. And the dehaze is for the space. It helps to darken up the space a little bit. And I don't want to lose too much to that. Okay, so I'm kind of cool with this. So we'll do 32 and 8. And we'll call this a day. Some pretty cool stuff going on there. And this is, remember, this is actually starting out as a negative image, which helps this edge detail, and it also helps the proms and helps any filaments that are on the surface. So now what we would want to do is, this is looking pretty good gradient wise, so I don't have, it might be darker here, so what we could do is add a new layer. I can grab the black and white and we'll just do something like this and do a soft light and bring this down. Maybe something like, I kind of like that. That helped. And now what we want to do is colorize. Oops. Let me just undo that. The first thing we need to do is actually make it an RGB image. We don't want to merge it. We don't want to rasterize it. We'll do an adjustment layer. And we'll go to the red. And because this is actually a reverse already, you'll see that we pick up some of the color in the out in space, but I don't mind that at all. And we'll do a little green. Now, where the green can help you is right in this really bright section. You can help bring a little green, put a little green back into that, and it kind of helps blend it in a little bit. And we can do the same thing with the RGB. Maybe darken it up a little. Not too much. Maybe something like that. Might be a little too orange, but that's okay. This is just to show you how you can simply add color to a black and white image. So now we have a lot of detail in the sun. There's some cool stuff happening up here. There's some stuff that's happening here that's off the surface. And then this guy right here is just so cool that I was able to get that. I can't believe this is this is just so cool. And then my little spikies are sticking out in the image. So using using these software packages, we were able to get an image like the one that's behind the names of the software packages in relatively short order. And that's from setting up the gear to making the flats to capturing the data to processing the data and having something that you can send or not send, but something that's a pleasure to look at. And this is I've searched the internet pretty much all winter, just looking at everybody's work, and this is a combination of probably 5 people, and I took what I liked from all those people and made it something that I'm happy to show others. So if you have any questions, you know where I live, and we'll see you in the group. Thank you.